Now today is a good day, and if you've been following my channel for an extended period of time, you would know that this channel started based only around BMX, and I still love BMX to the core. I ride 3 days a week, but I also love riding other bikes, my traditional bike and my electric bike. And today we are meshing both of them with the Chimera electric BMX bike. One of a kind, first of its kind. Well, I have featured an electric BMX bike here on the channel, but it was a DIY kit, my own personal DIY kit, vastly different than this. My kit had a mid-drive, which I took off of my mountain bike, put it on my BMX bike, and made it work. We flew around the skate park, did bar spins, tail whips, grinded ledges, as well as grinded an actual motor on a rail, which blew my mind that I was actually able to make that work out. Now, I will be doing a separate video with the Chimera only at the skate park here in the near future, which you should comment some of the tricks down below. With that being said, this is going to be a brief introduction to the brand, a full-on spec list of what this bike has to offer. I'm going to do a speed test, maybe even some ripping around the skate park as well, and talk about the pre-orders that are already out there. There are 100 pre-orders that are being fulfilled as we speak, which I'll give you guys more information as we get further in the video. So with that being said, let's get into it. Now I know this isn't the first time that motors have been featured on BMX bikes, and a lot of you old school riders know exactly what I'm talking about right now. And I feel like it's worth paying homage to a rider who pioneered so many tricks within our space and pioneered so many different things that we're seeing now, such as an electric BMX bike. Matt Hoffman is the man. He put a weed whacker engine on his BMX bike and did stuff like this. So with that being said, eventually, weed whacker motors were seen on bikes and scooters. Big shout out to my friend Scooter Don, who put a weed whacker motor on a scooter as well as a BMX bike. And eventually I was able to backflip that BMX bike. Here's the clip. So there are a couple differences between the one I was riding and the one Matt Hoffman rode. The one Matt Hoffman rode had a motor in the triangle of the frame. The one that I rode had the motor up by the steer tube, which in a way sometimes made it a bit easier to do different tricks. So with that being said, we have come so far, and today now we have the electrification of a BMX bike here in front of us. Let's break down all the specs right now. Now before we dive into the specs of the entire bike, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the high drive motor right here. A lot of people's eyes gravitate towards this and they're like, what? How does this work? Usually people see something like a hub drive motor or a mid drive motor. The high drive motor is one of a kind, and we're really going to dive into the specs, but I want to give you guys a brief taste of what this thing is capable of with the flick of a switch. Now as we zoom out and talk about the specs of the Chimera electric BMX bike, we're going to first start with the frame, and we're going to dive deep into these specs, so be prepared. The Chimera BMX frame is made out of titanium. It has a top tube length of 23.25. The chainstay is 15.125 slammed. The bottom bracket is a PF30. It's compatible with bearings of 19, 22, 24, 25, and 30 millimeter spindles. The head tube angle is 73 degrees, the seat tube angle is 71 degrees, the dropouts are 10 millimeter, the head tube is integrated, the seat tube is 27.2 millimeters, the drive chain line is 42 millimeters, the crank chain line is 53 millimeters, the max chain wheel is 36 tooth, the battery mount is a Chimera cone lock system. Now the upper bracket is what holds the transmission. That's 60 millimeters by 68 millimeters in width. Next is the fork, which is also titanium, which accommodates a wheel size of 24 inches. I'll also be testing out a 20-inch wheel here pretty soon, but 24 inch is what you're going to see on your bike when you purchase it. Now moving on to the handlebars and stem. The handlebars are made out of titanium, which are 1.5 millimeter straight gauge tubing. The width of the handlebars are 28.5 inches. The rise is 8.875. The back sweep is 11.5. The up sweep is 1.5 degrees, and these things weigh in at 18 ounces. Connecting the fork to the handlebar is the Chimera top load stem. It's made out of 6061 T6 aluminum. It has a reach of 52 millimeters and a stack of 32 millimeters. This is made for a 1 1/8 fork, and it comes with either steel bolts or titanium bolts. On my bike today, I have titanium bolts and it weighs in at 10.4 ounces. So right about now, some of you might be wondering, why titanium bolts? Why a titanium frame, handlebar, fork, cranks, and what purpose does that have within the space? Why not chromoly? And that's going to be something I'm going to be addressing here in a coming video when I'm riding this bike on the streets and at the skate park. So the simple answer to the question of why titanium, it has a lot to do with the overall bike weight. This bike weighs in at 36.5 pounds, and it makes for a skate park machine and a killer commute bike that has a max output of 3,800 watts. So that's a brief introduction of some of the parts and components that Chimera offers at the moment. They really take a lot of pride in the frame, fork, and handlebar customization. They also make stems, like I mentioned before, as well as hubs, which we'll showcase here when I talk about the rest of the components. But I really want to dive into the specs of the battery, the motor, and the controller. But before we do that, I want to do a speed test and talk about my experience with that. Now, Chimera claims that this bike can do a 0 to 30 in 5 seconds, and it all depends on your rider weight and the terrain that you're riding. This is a perfectly level and flat trail, and I was able to achieve that 0 to 30 in 5 seconds weighing 184 pounds. Now, they also claim that this bike can reach 35 miles per hour. Now, during my speed test, I was able to reach a max speed of 35.8 miles per hour with an average speed of 29.2 miles per hour, covering a distance of 1,770 feet in a total time of 44 seconds. Now, those are big numbers in my opinion. Now, I feel like if I didn't have a gnarly headwind like I did, I probably would have reached 36 or 37 miles per hour, which is insane to even think about on a bike like this. But with this bigger wheelbase, it definitely made it feel really, really stable. So with that being said, what made it get to that top speed? Let's dive into the battery specs, the motor specs, and the controller specs, and basically what makes this thing stop. Now, in order to achieve that top speed and instant torque, you need the proprietary high drive motor that Chimera offers. This is a 120 kV Chimera 5000 watt in-runner motor. The transmission on this bike is also proprietary to Chimera and is a first generation planetary transmission. Now, coupling that with the controller, which is an ASI BAC 855 controller, really helps this thing put out the power. But you can't put out a ton of power without knowing what this battery is capable of. This is a 52 volt, 8.4 amp hour, 494 watt hour battery pack. The BMS allows 90 amps of max output. The cells are moly cell, which are P42A 21700 cells. Now, packing all that power together, you gotta be able to control yourself and come to a controlled stop. Now, as we spoke about before, I will be running 20-inch wheels on this here pretty soon, but these are running the 24 by 2.3 Kendo K-Rad tires, as well as Tubolito tubes and Sunringle rims. And in order to stop this thing, you need some really good reliable brakes, and Chimera did not skimp out. The brakes on this bike are the Magura MT5 and MT4 brakes, coming with Magura Storm C 180mm and 160mm rotors, which stop on the dime. Now, like I said earlier, this is a brief introduction and a full breakdown of the Chimera electric BMX bike. Now, I'm gonna be doing a secondary video at the skate park here in the coming days, and I want you guys to comment some tricks you wanna see done on this bad boy, or maybe places you want me to take this bike to be able to show you guys, I guess, what the experience is like while riding this. So with that being said, if you're waiting for your bike, your Chimera electric BMX bike, there's good news. Your bike will be shipping later this month, which is absolutely awesome. So the first pre-orders are gonna be going out later this month. If you guys are interested in one of these bikes, the link in the description below will take you to more information about the bike, and you guys can use my referral code to be able to get some money off your purchase. With that being said, if there's any questions you have about this bike, Chimera Electric BMX will be in the comments below. And I'm gonna be doing a podcast with Austin here pretty soon. So if there's any other questions you guys have for me or any recommendations for different videos, put those in the comments below. If you guys like this video, drop a like. If you love it, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one.